Look, I just got done watching this 119 Ministries teaching called the Creation Prophecy. It just came out yesterday, so this is new stuff, and it's discussing the 6,000 year cycle. And I love teachings like this because the 6,000 year cycle doesn't exist in the Bible. It's a misunderstanding of essentially Psalm chapter 90, verse 4, which also does not say that a day is 1,000 years. It doesn't mean that a day is literally 1,000 years. In fact, if you go throughout the entire Bible, there is not a single time where a day is 1,000 years. It never means 1,000 years. And even in Psalm chapter 90, verse 4, which is being quoted by Peter in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, he is not discussing 1,000 years literally. Peter is discussing an event that's about to happen to them. He wrote a letter to address the scoffers that existed then. It's a just appropriate the word "you" correctly. When Peter wrote his letter 2,000 years ago, and he said he wrote that letter to you, beloved, who is the person he's writing it to? Is it you, the person that's alive today, 2,000 years later, or is it them, the initial recipient of the letter? The event is happening to the person to which he wrote the letter to. The scoffers exist then. The day of the Lord is quickly approaching then. All these events happen in the past. You live inside the new heaven and new earth right now. It's a misunderstanding of imagery language, misunderstanding of metaphors, misunderstanding of idioms, figures of speech, hyperbole, not reading passages according to context. It's all of this stuff together creates this problem. And it's horrifying for me to think about all the people that are watching this right now that are probably like crying, like, oh, they understand the Bible so well. They've tied all these things together. At the end of the video, they discuss how if you calculate the years, the Messiah's return will be around 2030, which is 13 years into the future. Mind you, this is the exact same ministry that said a few years ago that the Messiah was going to be returning in 2015. They had a whole series of teachings. They've since removed them from the website. Biblical prophecy is fulfilled. This belief that you live in the end of days and that the prophecies are near fulfillment is a fabrication of man. It's a religious tradition that's being put forward from generation to generation to generation. Read the text according to context. You'll find that the events that are described as being end-time prophecy, the end of days, the return of the Messiah, the second coming, it's happening to the initial recipients. That means it's happening in the first century. What was the end of the world? The end of the world is the passage of the Mosaic age, where they offered animal sacrifices to God. It ended in 70 AD. That's when it was destroyed. The passage of the heaven and earth is the moving from the Mosaic age, where individuals had to travel to Jerusalem 3 times a year. Sacrifices were being made. One bloodline, the Israelite bloodline, was elevated over all others. One landmass, Jerusalem, Israel, is elevated over everything else in the world. It's the passage of that order to the present order that we live in, where all bloodlines are equal before the Messiah, no land masses of special significance, and you, your own self, us, our own selves, are the temple of God. Jesus, of course, being the chief cornerstone, the foundation, and the foundation being the prophets and the apostles. The passage from the physical temple to the spiritual temple is the end of the world. That's the passage of heaven and earth. And individuals are incapable, for whatever reason, of understanding the metaphorical nature that's being discussed, even though when you read the gospel account, Jesus is always speaking in a metaphorical nature all the time. That's why he's tripping people up left and right. So it's horrifying to think about all the people who think that this is an extremely significant teaching, but I'll tell you very plainly, this is absolute crap. This is total baloney, and it's kind of sad because you realize that this is the fuel of so much of Christianity. And even this is Hebrew Israelites, but Messianics, whatever, Christianity in general. The fuel is that you live in the end of days and that it's near the return of the Messiah. Horrifying. An enormous misunderstanding that just keeps getting passed down generation to generation. And there we are. So, yeah, that's it. See you guys.